Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. Today, we will discuss two cases involving Chinese students in the United States. Cases that have shocked the Chinese community and the academic world alike. On August 30th, 2005, at a parking lot near O'Hare Airport in Chicago, Illinois, police sirens blared through the air. Officers had discovered an abandoned car that had been sitting in the lot for days. When they opened the trunk, they found a dismembered body. Upon forensic examination, the victim was identified as He Lei, a Chinese international student at Purdue University. The car was also registered under his name. As the investigation unfolded, police learned that He Lei had a wife, Chen Danlei, who was also a student at Purdue. Just 4 days earlier, Danlei had been arrested at Shanghai Pudong Airport while attempting to enter China using He Lei's identification. He Lei had no complicated social ties and no known enemies. However, police couldn't ignore a chilling coincidence. His wife had used his identity to leave the country right around the time of his disappearance. Was she the prime suspect? And if so, had she really murdered her own husband? According to the Chinese embassy in the United States, Danlei was born in 1977 in Chengdu, Sichuan. Exceptionally intelligent from a young age, she ranked 5th in the entire nation on her college entrance exam and secured a place at Tsinghua University's Chemical Engineering Department. During China's reform era, attending college was a dream opportunity and often the only way to change one's life. As a young woman stepping into independence, Danlei embraced the excitement of university life and secretly longed for romance. Love soon found her, through an encounter that seemed straight out of a movie. During her 3rd year, she found an expensive-looking fountain pen left behind in a lecture hall. When she saw a lost and found notice for it, she reached out to the owner, none other than He Lei. The pen, a cherished gift from his parents when he was admitted to Tsinghua, held deep sentimental value. Overjoyed to have it back, he was immensely grateful to Danlei, and the two stayed in touch. As they grew closer, He Lei's cheerful and outgoing nature added color to Danlei's otherwise monotonous college life. For the first time, she felt a sense of emotional salvation. Unlike He Lei, Danlei came from a troubled family. Her mother was a factory worker, while her father was a university professor. The stark contrast in their social status led to a deeply unbalanced marriage. Her mother, feeling inferior to her father, developed insecurities that spiraled into constant suspicion and distrust. Their marriage was filled with heated arguments, eventually leading to divorce. This environment shaped Danlei's emotional outlook. She became pessimistic, sensitive, and socially withdrawn. However, in her relationship with He Lei, she took the initiative. Long before they became a couple, she brought him meals, saved him seats in lectures, and even escorted him back to his dormitory. Slowly but surely, their friendship turned into love. After graduating from Tsinghua, Danlei was initially accepted into the university's graduate program in chemical engineering. However, while working on her thesis, she clashed with her advisor. Their disagreements escalated into heated arguments, making it impossible for her to continue under his mentorship. Disheartened, she abandoned her plans to stay at Tsinghua and instead applied to U.S. universities. Eventually, she secured a fully funded scholarship to Purdue University. While this was a remarkable achievement, she was far from happy. Studying abroad meant long-distance separation from He Lei, who had decided to stay in China for his own graduate studies. She feared that distance would weaken their bond and that he might find someone else. Determined not to lose him, Danlei proposed an alternative. He Lei should apply for a visa as her spouse and move to the U.S. with her. Since her scholarship covered full expenses, she assured him that they could manage together. Understanding her concerns, He Lei agreed. However, since a dependent visa required proof of marriage, they hastily got legally married before leaving for the U.S. together. At first, life in America felt exciting and new. Having each other made the unfamiliar seem less intimidating. In a foreign land, they relied on each other, and their bond seemed stronger than ever. Danlei focused on her studies, while He Lei took care of household tasks, cooking meals for her after long days at school. In 2003, Danlei successfully earned her master's degree and secured a position as a research assistant at Purdue. Around the same time, Lei was also admitted into Purdue's graduate program, transitioning from a dependent visa to a student visa. With this, his role shifted, from being just Danlei's husband to being an independent scholar at the same university. His outgoing and friendly personality quickly expanded his social circle, while Danlei remained as introverted as ever. After the passing of her mother, her relationship with her father remained distant. In her eyes, Lei had become her entire world. However, as Lei became more socially engaged, Danlei grew increasingly uneasy. She disliked him spending time with friends and refused to accompany him to social gatherings. Over time, her possessiveness intensified, and she exerted more control over his interactions. Lei noticed the shift in their relationship but didn't address it immediately. Their fights grew more frequent and explosive, with threats of divorce looming over them. One of the worst arguments occurred on Christmas Eve, 2004. That night, Lei had made plans to attend a holiday party with friends, a gathering where everyone was expected to bring their significant other. However, Danlei refused to go, insisting that they should spend the evening alone together. Their disagreement escalated into a heated confrontation. Blinded by rage, Danlei grabbed a knife and stabbed Lei in the chest. Fortunately, the wound wasn't fatal, but it was serious enough for police intervention. Danlei was arrested, and her passport was confiscated during the investigation. After being treated at the hospital, Lei, perhaps out of love, or maybe out of loyalty to their marriage, paid $5,000 for her bail. As a precaution, the court issued a protective order, banning Danlei from approaching Lei until she received psychological treatment. Danlei then underwent months of therapy. Following the advice of her psychiatrist, she and Lei reconciled and moved back in together. However, her outburst had lasting consequences. Purdue University, upon learning about the violent incident, terminated her employment as a research assistant. Without a job or academic responsibilities, Danlei withdrew even further from the outside world, growing increasingly paranoid and insecure. Their fights only worsened. At some point, Lei reached his breaking point. After enduring months of emotional turmoil, he asked for a divorce. For the first time, Danlei realized their marriage was truly crumbling. She began to mentally prepare for the worst. On August 18, 2005, she purchased a firearm online using a fake identity. The next day, another argument erupted. Lei told her he was moving out and cutting ties for good. No matter how much Danlei begged, pleaded, and apologized, he stood firm. For Danlei, Lei was more than just a husband. He was her entire existence, and that existence was slipping away. That night, as she lay awake watching him sleep, two opposing voices battled inside her mind. By dawn, her decision was made. She reached for the gun she had bought just a day earlier, pressed the barrel through a pillow, and pulled the trigger, twice. If she couldn't have him, no one could. According to her later testimony in court, Danlei panicked after shooting Lei. Seeing blood pouring from the back of his head, she tried to stop the bleeding using fabric, but eventually, Lei stopped breathing. She held his lifeless body and cried loudly, keeping his corpse in the apartment with her for some time. She didn't remember how many days had passed until the decomposition began, forcing her to take action. Danlei claimed that she paid $2,000 to a man named Jack to help move Lei's body into a refrigerator. However, she alleged that Jack took it upon himself to dismember the corpse without consulting her. She tried to distance herself from the dismemberment, implying she had no part in it to avoid a harsher sentence. However, police found no evidence that Jack ever existed. Furthermore, a grocery store employee confirmed that, after Lei's murder, Danlei had gone to the store and purchased garbage bags, gloves, and deodorizing chemicals. When questioned about this, Danlei claimed that Jack had instructed her to buy these items, but she had no proof to support her statement. With sufficient evidence, investigators concluded that Danlei had carried out the entire crime on her own. Additionally, police found a yellow notebook in which she had written a post-murder plan, listing tasks such as buying large garbage bags, considering body disposal options, leaving for China on Thursday, purchasing a hat for disguise, and withdrawing money from the bank for emergency funds. Among her personal belongings, officers also found notes outlining plans to rent an apartment upon her return to China. On her computer, investigators discovered email exchanges regarding the purchase of the firearm. By this point, the truth was clear. Driven by obsessive love and resentment, Danlei had meticulously planned the murder of Haiyang. She purchased the gun in advance and killed him on August 19, 2005. Afterward, she dismembered his body herself, placed the remains in his car, and drove toward Chicago to flee. She eventually abandoned the vehicle in a hotel parking lot. She used her own identification to book a one-night stay at the hotel, then used Haiyang's documents to purchase a plane ticket to Shanghai. On August 26, 2005, Danlei disguised herself as a man, took Haiyang's passport, and boarded a flight back to China. However, upon arrival at Shanghai Pudong International Airport, customs officers discovered her identity fraud and arrested her on the spot. As the investigation unfolded, authorities found that the passport's rightful owner, Haiyang, had been missing for several days. By August 30th, news from the U.S. confirmed that Haiyang had been murdered, finally revealing the dark truth behind his disappearance. On September 4th, 2006, the Shanghai No. 1 Intermediate People's Court sentenced Danlei to death with a 2-year suspension and ordered her to pay more than 440,000 yuan in civil compensation to Haiyang's parents. However, due to good behavior in prison, Danlei's sentence was reduced 5 times, and she is now scheduled for release on October 29, 2025. 4 years later, a shockingly similar case took place in Virginia, USA. On January 21, 2009, the Virginia Tech campus police received an emergency call reporting that a man was stabbing someone inside the Graduate Life Center cafe. When officers arrived at the scene, they were horrified by the gruesome sight. A man was holding a severed, blood-covered head while walking toward them. On the floor, a pool of blood surrounded a lifeless body. The suspect, still holding the head, was identified as Zhu Haiyang, a PhD student at Virginia Tech. The victim was Yang Xin, also a student at the university. Both were Chinese international students. What exactly happened between Haiyang and Yang Xin? According to the investigation, on January 8, 2009, 22-year-old Yang Xin left China for Virginia, USA. This was her second time studying abroad. She was originally from Beijing and had previously earned her undergraduate degree from Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada. This time, she was enrolling in a master's program in accounting. Arriving in a foreign country, Yang Xin faced the usual challenges: unfamiliar surroundings, difficulties navigating the area, and a long list of administrative tasks to complete before settling in. The mix of excitement and anxiety weighed on her. At that moment, a senior student, Zhu Haiyang, reached out to her. Originally from Ningbo, Zhejiang, Zhu Haiyang had earned both his bachelor's and master's degrees from the Shanghai University of Economics and Trade. He was now pursuing a PhD in agricultural economics at Virginia Tech. Haiyang was incredibly helpful. He picked her up from the airport, carried her luggage, and guided her through the complicated enrollment procedures. Watching him rush around taking care of things, Yang Xin felt relieved, knowing she had a reliable senior student looking out for her. With enrollment successfully completed, she saw this as a promising start. Having someone familiar with the university would surely make her transition easier. However, after completing her registration, Yang Xin encountered a major problem. The university dorms had not yet opened for new students, forcing her to find off-campus housing. Finding a place was frustrating. She didn't have a car, so she couldn't live too far from campus, but the apartments closest to the university were too expensive. What could she do? She stayed in a hotel temporarily, but the cost was too high. After a few days, she turned to Haiyang for help. He happily agreed to assist her. But after searching extensively, Yang Xin and Zhu Haiyang still couldn't find a suitable place to rent. At this point, Haiyang made a suggestion. His rental had 2 bedrooms, and one was unoccupied. Yang Xin could move in. Haiyang assumed she would refuse, but to his surprise and delight, she quickly agreed. Although Yang Xin agreed to move in purely to save on living expenses, Haiyang misinterpreted her intentions and began romanticizing their relationship. Yang Xin was outgoing, generous, intelligent, and beautiful, qualities that fascinated the socially withdrawn Haiyang. He even convinced himself that she reciprocated his feelings. Once Yang Xin moved in, their cohabitation did not unfold as Haiyang had hoped. He continuously expressed his affection, frequently picking her up from school, showering her with compliments, and even writing her love letters telling her, "I would cherish you forever if we could be together." However, Yang Xin saw Haiyang only as a friend. She made it clear that she had a boyfriend in China, their relationship was stable, and they were planning to get married. Even though his hopes were shattered, Zhu Haiyang refused to give up. But Yang Xin's repeated rejections deeply wounded his pride. He began to convince himself that, in terms of family background and education, her boyfriend was unworthy of her. Only he was the right match for Yang Xin. For Yang Xin, however, the situation became increasingly uncomfortable. Being pursued by someone she did not have feelings for, while also having to live under the same roof, was unbearable. She became desperate to move out. Finally, just 1 week after moving in, Yang Xin found a suitable apartment. She immediately informed Haiyang that she was leaving, but Haiyang flew into a rage. He adamantly refused to let her go, saying, "You agreed to live here. You can't just leave." At that moment, Yang Xin was terrified. Haiyang's furious outburst revealed a side of him she had never seen before. Fearing he might do something irrational, she pretended to agree to stay. However, as soon as Haiyang left the house, Yang Xin seized the opportunity. She grabbed her already packed bags and fled. When Zhu Haiyang returned home and discovered that Yang Xin had secretly escaped, his devastation turned into uncontrollable rage. Feeling betrayed and humiliated, he made a chilling decision. If he couldn't have Yang Xin, no one else could. On January 21st, 2009, Haiyang purchased an 8-inch butcher knife, a hammer, and 2 additional backup knives. As if that wasn't disturbing enough, he also bought a bouquet of flowers. His mind was consumed with a single thought. Today, Yang Xin has only 2 choices. Either she accepts me, or she dies. He called her more than 10 times, pleading for a final conversation to clear up any misunderstandings. He invited her to meet at a cafe inside the Graduate Life Center. Yang Xin hesitated, but she thought to herself, "It's always better to gain a friend than to make an enemy." After all, Haiyang had helped her before. She even trusted him enough to list him as her emergency contact. If she could resolve the misunderstanding, they might still remain friends. So she agreed to meet him. As soon as Yang Xin arrived, Haiyang presented her with the bouquet of flowers he had prepared. But she refused to take them. She knew Haiyang still hadn't given up. Once again, she firmly told him, "I already have a boyfriend and I'm getting married soon. Please stop pursuing me." This time, Zhu Haiyang was completely devastated. He reached into his backpack, pulled out a knife, and lunged at Yang Xin. She was completely unprepared and had no time to react. He stabbed her repeatedly, one brutal strike after another. The cafe erupted into chaos. Customers screamed and ran for their lives, too terrified to intervene. As Yang Xin lay lifeless in a pool of blood, Haiyang paused for a moment. Then he used his knife to sever her head from her body. Amid the panic and confusion, a cafe employee managed to call the police. When officers arrived at the scene, they were met with a horrific sight. Yang Xin's body lay on the floor, while Haiyang calmly walked toward them, holding her severed head in his hands. On April 19, 2010, the Montgomery County Circuit Court in Virginia convicted Zhu Haiyang of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without parole. A once brilliant doctoral student had destroyed another person's life out of selfish desire. And in doing so, he had also condemned himself to spend the rest of his days behind bars. Many people who knew Haiyang expressed shock and regret, saying, "He was always polite and well-mannered. No one ever imagined he was capable of something like this." Similarly, in the first case, Chen Danlei had also been an exceptional student, a high achiever with a promising future. But intelligence does not equal emotional maturity. Both Zhu Haiyang and Danlei were isolated individuals, lacking experience in handling relationships. They viewed the world through the lens of their own desires, never considering the feelings of others. In the end, this self-centered obsession led them down a path of destruction. That concludes these two tragic cases. Now let's head to Taiwan to uncover the next chilling crime story. On the evening of July 15, 2004, two men walked into the Criminal Investigation Bureau on Zhongxiao East Road in Taipei. They said they wanted to report something and handed over 2 cell phones, a piece of paper, and a kitchen knife. One of the men then slowly spoke. "I suspect that I have been caught up in a murder case." The police were immediately puzzled. Typically, someone reporting a crime is either a victim or a witness. Even someone confessing wouldn't use the phrase "caught up in." Seeing the tense expression on the man's face, the officers sensed that this was no ordinary case. After further questioning, the man finally began to reveal his story. His name was Lin, a stable employed engineer. He explained that 4 years ago he had met his girlfriend, Huang Liyan, through a university club at National Taiwan University. 1 week earlier, in the early hours of the morning, she suddenly asked him to come to Taichung to help her dispose of 2 large bags in the Dadu Mountains. Each bag was very heavy, and when he touched them, he felt a red liquid that resembled blood. Suspicious, he asked what was inside. His girlfriend told him that they were inflatable dolls made in the United States, and that they contained a liquid inside to create a more realistic feel, which explained the weight. Lin Junchen recalled, "At the time, I believed her, but I still asked why she didn't just throw them into a dumpster." She replied, "If that were an option, I wouldn't be going through all this trouble." Afterward, Huang inexplicably gave him 2 cell phones and a kitchen knife. On top of that, the piece of paper he found in her rented apartment contained lyrics to a song titled in Chinese, which could be translated into English as, "The deeper the love, the deeper the hate," full of resentment and bitterness. This led him to suspect that his girlfriend had been involved in a secret affair. After all, in their 4 years together, they had never argued, and their relationship had only progressed to holding hands. In short, there was no deep emotional connection between them. The handwritten note in her apartment was clearly not meant for him. The more Lin thought about it, the more uneasy he became. Finally, he decided to report everything to the police, bringing a friend along for support. After hearing Lin's story, the officers found it hard to believe. However, because it involved human life, they needed to verify his claims. They took his official statement and immediately drove him down to Taichung, heading to the Dadu Mountains to search for these mysterious inflatable dolls. In the early hours of July 16th, officers from Taipei's Criminal Investigation Bureau and the local Wuri precinct followed Lin's directions up the Dadu Mountains. As they passed Wanggoliao Lookout, the surrounding area grew more desolate, fewer cars, fewer people. Finally, as they neared a missile base, Lin pointed at a steep slope overgrown with wild grass and said, "This is the place." The police cleared the thick vegetation, then secured ropes and descended down the slope. Less than 20 minutes later, they discovered a fabric bag that matched Lin's description. Working together, they hauled it up to solid ground and unsealed it. Inside, they found a human head wrapped in duct tape. The officers froze in shock, and so did Lin, who had been standing nearby to help identify the contents. Just moments ago, wasn't this supposed to be an inflatable doll? If the head was here, then where was the body? And most importantly, who was the victim? The police hurried to continue the search, following Lin's directions to another location 1.8 miles away near a cemetery. According to Lin, he and his girlfriend had thrown a second fabric bag into a ravine nearby. After a thorough search, they discovered a naked body wrapped in 6 layers of black plastic bags. After discovering the body, the case was officially opened. As police were preparing to investigate the victim's identity and contact Huang for questioning, Lin's phone suddenly rang. It was a call from none other than his girlfriend, Huang Liyan. The officers immediately instructed Lin to stay calm and asked where Huang was. When she responded that she was in Taipei, the police had Lin arrange a meeting with her at 6:30 p.m. in front of the Hilton Hotel. After a full day of searching, night had begun to fall. The police divided into two teams. The Wuri precinct focused on identifying the victim. The Criminal Investigation Bureau transported Lin back to Taipei to set up an ambush for Huang. That night in Taipei, the city was bustling. The Hilton Hotel near Taipei Main Station was packed with commuters heading home from work. Police officers lay in wait, keeping a close watch on the surroundings. Then, a petite woman standing barely 5 feet 2 inches and appearing frail walked into view carrying a large backpack. Lin immediately confirmed it was her. The police found it hard to believe. How could someone so small and delicate be involved in a brutal dismemberment case? When officers approached and questioned her, she initially denied being Huang. But when police presented her identification and mentioned the body in the Dadu Mountains, the woman finally admitted the truth and agreed to cooperate at the Criminal Investigation Bureau. Before interrogating Huang Liyan in Taipei, police received a report from Wuri Precinct. DNA analysis and a comparison with missing person records confirmed the victim's identity. Zhao Yinchang, a telecommunications store owner from Longjing, reported missing since July 13th. Investigators found Zhao's ring inside Huang's backpack, and the 2 cell phones that Lin had turned in were also confirmed to belong to Zhao. Huang confessed to the crime. Through tears, she claimed that she had met Zhao 2 years ago while getting her phone repaired. But after they started seeing each other, she discovered that he was not only a heavy drinker, but also extremely violent, often beating her while intoxicated. A year into their relationship, Huang became pregnant. Rather than supporting her, Zhao insisted she get an abortion and immediately broke up with her, leaving her devastated. Then, just 1 week before the murder, Zhao showed up drunk at her rented apartment, attempting to sexually assault her. During the struggle, Huang grabbed a kitchen knife in self-defense. She claimed that in the chaos, she accidentally stabbed Zhao in the neck. Huang calmly recounted, "The knife in his neck looked terrible, so I decided to separate them." She added that the song lyrics from "The deeper the love, the deeper the hate" could explain everything. The police, however, found many inconsistencies in her statement. How could a petite woman, barely 5 feet 2 inches and weighing around 90 pounds, single-handedly kill a full-grown man? Did she have an accomplice? Was it truly self-defense? Further investigation was necessary. What puzzled police even more was Huang's demeanor. That night, after her interrogation ended, she was transferred to a detention center. Yet she remained eerily calm, showing neither panic over committing a murder nor grief over the loss of a lover. Police investigations revealed that Zhao, the 34-year-old victim, was a well-known figure in Longjing. He had assisted authorities in solving a major dismemberment case involving an insurance agent. He had once been the youngest president of Lions Clubs International, the largest service club organization in the world, with over 1.4 million members across approximately 46,000 clubs in more than 200 countries and regions. To his neighbors, Zhao was a generous man, frequently donating to those in need. He was seen as a loving husband and father, with a great reputation in the community. What made the tragedy even more heartbreaking was that the day Zhao's body was discovered happened to be his youngest son's 5th birthday. The little boy would never again hear his father sing him a birthday song. When Zhao Yinchang's friends heard about his death, their immediate reaction was that it had to be related to a love affair. At the funeral home, his wife, Xi Jing, collapsed in front of his memorial plaque, wailing in grief. Was she jealous? Did she do this because she envied our happiness? Because she couldn't have him, I'll avenge you. A life for a life. Her words directly pointed the blame at Huang Liyan. According to Zhao's family, it was true that he and Huang had a past relationship, but the reality was entirely different from Huang's version of events. They insisted that Zhao had wanted to cut ties with Huang for a long time. They did not believe the story about him drunkenly assaulting her, nor did they believe it was an accidental killing. Instead, they accused Huang outright, claiming she had a criminal history and that they had filed multiple police reports against her in the past. When they saw Zhao's body, they noticed something unsettling. The wound on his neck was clean and precise. There were no other injuries on his body. They suspected Huang had planned this for a long time and possibly had an accomplice. So, what exactly happened between Huang and Zhao? How did they meet? Huang, 38 years old, was a university administrator at Zhonghai University, located near Zhao's telecommunications store, just 160 feet away. The two met by chance when Huang visited Zhao's shop to get her phone repaired. One day, Zhonghai University hosted an event, and Huang gave Zhao a lottery ticket. Zhao unexpectedly won the grand prize, and in his excitement, he invited Huang to dinner. Believing Zhao was single, Huang developed feelings for him over time, and before long, they started dating. A year into the relationship, Huang became pregnant. At first, she thought this would lead to marriage, but Zhao's response shocked her. He insisted she get an abortion and immediately ended the relationship. When she pressed him for an explanation, he finally admitted the truth. He was already married with 2 children. Huang was devastated. But instead of quietly walking away, she chose to retaliate. She didn't just cause disturbances at his store. She stalked him, memorizing his daily schedule. She vandalized his shop, throwing paint on the walls. She called and threatened his wife. At times, Huang's rage spiraled out of control. The most extreme incident occurred when she took Zhao's car and sped recklessly on the highway, crashing into a police vehicle, refusing to stop even after officers fired warning shots. Despite all this, Zhao never fully severed ties with Huang. In May 2004, they even got into a heated physical fight inside Zhao's shop. Yet somehow, he still couldn't completely break away from her. Their communication never truly stopped. Even Huang's landlord confirmed that they had seen Zhao visit multiple times. Each time, he and Huang greeted each other warmly, calling each other brother and sister, laughing together, chatting as if nothing was wrong. The atmosphere seemed friendly, completely contradicting the Zhao family's claim that he detested Huang. Just as both sides were arguing over the truth, Huang Liyan suddenly changed her statement. She now claimed she wasn't the killer. Instead, she pointed the finger at her boyfriend, Lin. Huang now alleged that Zhao had come to visit her that night, but Lin unexpectedly showed up too. The moment the two men saw each other, they immediately began arguing. Then, according to Huang, Lin suddenly grabbed a pillow and smothered Zhao's face. Within minutes, Zhao stopped breathing. She claimed that she was too terrified to intervene, and fearing that Lin might kill her next, she agreed to help dispose of the body. These statements made the police highly suspicious. Could Lin have killed Zhao out of jealousy and staged the entire scene to mislead investigators? However, Lin Junqian remained remarkably calm. He simply denied the accusation without offering much explanation. When police interviewed Huang's neighbors, some claimed they had seen Lin in her apartment at the time of the murder, but others stated they had not heard any arguments throughout the night. With the case taking an unexpected turn, police swiftly arrested Lin on charges of first-degree murder. However, evidence quickly emerged that contradicted Huang's statement. According to the forensic report, first, no alcohol was detected in Zhao's system, disproving Huang's initial claim that he was drunk and attempting to assault her. Second, his lungs showed no signs of pulmonary edema, which debunked Huang's claim that Zhao had been suffocated with a pillow. Most importantly, the time of death was estimated between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. However, Lin had been traveling to Taichung during that time, and surveillance footage from a convenience store at 3:45 a.m. confirmed his alibi, making it physically impossible for him to have committed the crime. When confronted with this evidence, Huang still didn't panic. Instead, she changed her story once again. She admitted Lin wasn't the killer. She had only accused him to see his reaction, but she also denied committing the murder herself, claiming that someone else was responsible, yet she refused to reveal the person's identity. By this point, police no longer relied on her shifting statements. They already had enough solid forensic evidence. The autopsy not only proved Lin had an alibi. More crucially, Zhao's stomach contained traces of sleeping pills. Huang immediately denied poisoning him, claiming that Zhao regularly took sleeping pills on his own. However, hospital records showed that Zhao had never been prescribed such medication. Additionally, lab tests revealed that the sleeping pills in his system were identical to the ones Huang possessed. Although Huang then changed her story again, saying Zhao must have taken her pills voluntarily, her own original statement contradicted this claim. How could someone who intended to assault her willingly take a sedative beforehand? The truth was becoming increasingly clear. Finally, by analyzing surveillance footage and reviewing phone records, police were able to reconstruct the entire crime timeline. What really happened? July 9th, 11:43 p.m. Huang sent Zhao a suggestive, affectionate message. Midnight. She called Lin Junchen, claiming she had severe stomach pain and begged him to take her to the hospital. At first, Lin refused, but Huang threatened him, saying, "If you don't come now, don't bother coming ever again." Lin reluctantly left for Taichung. July 10th, 12:45 a.m. After receiving Huang's text, Zhao called her back and arrived at her apartment shortly after. Once inside, Huang served Zhao a drink spiked with sleeping pills. As soon as Zhao became unconscious, she used a butcher knife to decapitate him. After severing his head, she wrapped his face in duct tape and sealed his body in 6 layers of black plastic bags. 3:45 a.m. Lin arrived in Taichung and waited at a convenience store. 4:08 a.m. He received a call from Huang. 5:27 a.m. Huang finally arrived, riding her motorbike. After meeting up, the two returned to Huang's apartment. She handed Lin the murder weapon, the butcher knife, to keep in his possession. Then, they spent the rest of the night in the same room with Zhao's corpse, casually resting until morning. Throughout this entire process, it is almost certain that Lin was fully aware that Huang had committed murder. At 10 a.m., Lin drove Huang on a motorbike to Chongqing Hospital for a medical checkup. While waiting, Huang called a friend, Bing Huang, and lied that her father was sick, asking to borrow a car to take him to Taichung Hospital. Bing Huang, suspecting nothing, agreed to hand over the car at 8 p.m. After leaving the hospital, Huang and Lin rode the motorbike to a hardware store and supermarket, where they purchased fabric bags and sewing supplies. They then drove up Dadu Mountain to scout the area. At 8 p.m., Huang picked up the car from Zhuobing Huang and returned to her rental home. Together, she and Lin carried Zhao's body to the car. To cover up any bloodstains, Lin even collected sand from the roadside and sprinkled it over the trail. The two then drove up the mountain, disposing of the body on a hillside near a military camp and a cemetery. However, on their way back, fearing that the body might be discovered too easily, they returned at 10:30 p.m. to push Zhao's body further down the slope before finally heading back to Longjing. Before Lin Junchen returned to Taipei, Huang gave him Zhao's 2 cell phones. Lin left Taipei with 2 phones, a butcher knife, and the piece of paper he had found at Huang's home. Even though police found no traces of blood inside Huang's apartment, they did discover Zhao's blood along the roadside and in Bing Huang's car. They also found Zhao's documents in a medical waste bin. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Huang never admitted to planning Zhao's murder. She even made excuses, claiming that she had a stockpile of black plastic bags at home because she had been preparing to move after severe flooding in early July. However, there was no denying that she had laced Zhao's drink with sedatives, rendering him unconscious before killing him. This also reminded police of her very first interrogation, when she referenced a song titled, "The Deeper the Love, the Deeper the Hate," stating that this song could explain everything. One particular lyric stood out. "Knowing that drinking this glass of wine will mark the beginning of our separation." Was this her hidden message all along? As for Lin, forensic analysis confirmed that Zhao's neck wounds were caused by 2 separate knife strikes, proving that despite her petite frame, Huang was physically capable of committing the murder on her own. However, Lin's initial testimony was also exposed as a lie. He finally admitted, "I knew the bags didn't contain inflatable dolls." He also confessed to knowingly helping Huang dispose of the body, despite fully understanding what had happened. With irrefutable evidence, both suspects were brought to trial, Huang for murder and Lin for being an accomplice in body disposal. Even in court, Huang remained arrogant. When the judge asked how much compensation she intended to pay Zhao's family, she scoffed and replied, "Why should I be responsible for raising his children? What about the fact that he forced me to have an abortion? Is 10 million too little? How about 20 million? During the first trial, Huang Liyan was sentenced to death, while Lin received an 8-month prison term. Huang immediately appealed. However, in January 2008, the judge took additional factors into account. Despite being mentally competent, Huang had indeed been forced to have an abortion by Zhao. Her deep emotional attachment led to psychological distress. She had also suffered a brain injury in a past car accident, which drastically altered her personality and caused severe emotional instability. Ultimately, Huang was sentenced to life in prison for murder and ordered to pay 13.8 million new Taiwan dollars in compensation to the victim's family. Lin Junqian received an 8-month prison sentence for aiding in body disposal. However, Zhao Yinchang's family strongly opposed the ruling, arguing that the sentence was too lenient. Under Taiwanese law, Huang could apply for parole after serving 14 years, while the pain Zhao's family endured would last a lifetime. In 2022, after serving 14 years, Huang applied for parole as permitted by law, but her request was denied. She remains in prison to this day. Yes, Huang paid the price for her actions. But looking beyond the case, was this really a one-sided crime? If Zhao had indeed deceived Huang Liyan, leading her on in an extramarital relationship for 2 years, could this entire tragedy have been avoided? However, Zhao's father once calmly stated, "My son only made the same mistake that many men do." This remark leaves us wondering, was it the family's tolerance that enabled Zhao Yinchang to continue walking down such a dangerous path?